Now, this Monday, an El Al jet is carrying Israeli and US government officials to Abu Dhabi. It's the first commercial flight between the Jewish state and any Persian Gulf country. Officials say this is a symbolic and substantive demonstration of improved ties since the two countries signed what's been dubbed a historic agreement earlier this month. However, according to some observers, this was a peace deal in name only. For more on this, let's bring in our international affairs editor, Philip Turle. Philip, thank you so much for being with us. Great to have you here on set. Israel, we know, has had relations with other Arab nations, albeit unofficially. Just how significant is this flight?
Well, if you look back over time, you'll find there's been no agreement of any sort between the United Arab Emirates and Israel since 1972, so we're almost up to the 50-year mark. And if you look back earlier this month to the 13th of August and this historic peace deal between the two countries, this is the first concrete step to show that they are now normalising their relations. This plane's just taken off about 15, 20 minutes ago, is on its way to the United Arab Emirates, carrying on board Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's key advisor and son-in-law, the man who's behind the Middle East peace plan, which obviously hasn't come to anything at the moment. So I think for the United States, this is a very important moment, like it is for the United Arab Emirates. So having a look at what the two sides are getting out of this, it's obviously very good news for Israel because it's breaking the wall of solidarity amongst Arab nations towards the Palestinians, i.e. we're not going to sign a deal with Israel until there is a two-state solution and the end of the standoff between Israel and the Palestinians. This is the first time that a country has agreed to sign a deal with Israel without demanding that the Israelo-Palestinian conflict is brought to an end first of all. So that is already good news for Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, who is under stress because of a corruption trial that he's facing. And another good piece of news for Benjamin Netanyahu is that he doesn't have to go ahead with the annexation project for the West Bank, because that was one of the items in the deal, which
certainly not for the time being.
Under which Israel was going to shelve that as part of the deal with the United Arab Emirates. Netanyahu will never give in to pushing through with that deal, but for the moment he hasn't got to deal with it, which is going to be very complicated for him when he does have to deal with it.
Philip, you just mentioned Jared Kushner. Very important moment for him, given that he is behind this so-called agreement. But of course, the US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, appears to have had a lot less luck in trying to persuade Arab states to normalize their relations with Israel. Why is that?
Well, first of all, this is good news for Donald Trump, this signing and this flight today, because Donald Trump desperately wants to bring on board the Jewish voters in the United States and the evangelist voters in the United States for the upcoming elections in November. So he has got a feather in his cap, even though his Middle East peace process plan has not managed to come to fruition yet. As far as the other countries that Mike Pompeo visited are concerned, there's a certain reluctance, basically because they want to see a two-state solution, first of all, in the Middle East before they're willing to sign an agreement. I'm talking about Bahrain, for example, also Oman and also Sudan. Less so in Sudan. Sudan is in a transition period, so it's not willing to sign any agreement with Israel at the moment until a transitional government has been installed and their elections are held in 2022. So quite a lot of reluctance, and I think also to a wait-and-see policy to see what Saudi Arabia is going to do. Once Saudi Arabia agrees ever to sign a deal with Israel, and I think that will make Bahrain willing to sign it. For the moment, Bahrain doesn't want to because Saudi Arabia hasn't signed it. It's a wait-and-see game, but a lot of reluctance, I think, and disappointment for Mike Pompeo, hoping that more countries would jump on board and sign this agreement. But at least as far as the Americans are concerned and the Israelis, the United Arab Emirates has done so.
Philip Turle, as always, great to have you on. Thank you so much for that analysis.